Okay, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the late one in review with yours truly, SYLBOURNE SHOW. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. And tonight we've got a very interesting panel where we'll be talking about the same issues of the day. They keep going around in circles and they keep going on in circles, but with different input each time. We've got the advent of COVID, we've got the advent of unemployment, we've got the advent of issues with Wiley, which take my MBE back. We've got the issues, of course, in regards to, they're talking about with the whole aspect of COVID, which is talking about the spike. So therefore, somehow we may spend a lot more time on that, but I'd love for you to give your perspective. And of course, please share this video and as well. So without further ado, I'm going to invite my different guests one by one. And I'll first invite to the show, KEIMA Allen. KEIMA, good evening, and how are you?
Good evening, SYLBOURNE. I'm doing very well. I mean, today the sun was out, so I was quite pleased with that. I was saying to myself, it's probably the perfect time if you're on furlough. You could be outside, lying outside, enjoying, soaking up the sun. So yes, it's brilliant day today.
Fantastic. And I'm going to bring on next Anthony Francis, who is our surprise guest today. Anthony, how are you doing, sir?
Very well, thank you, SYLBOURNE. And again, thanks for being on, inviting me to come onto the show.
Yes, yes.
Like KEIMA, it's been a good day to be out in the sunshine, and I've taken advantage of that today.
Yeah, and with Anthony, ladies and gentlemen, is a project manager, the author of Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. And also he was the latest on the Black Excellence program. And also Anthony was behind the 100,000 signatures for NHS to have that special day, which he's going to talk about later, which was done in Parliament. And my next guest will be, of course, she seems to win each time, and that is Team KEISHA. KEISHA, how are you doing today? Oh no, are you mute? KEISHA, can we hear you? KEISHA?
The chance, Richie blocked her today.
Oh yeah, I think you keep challenging the chancellor each time, and the chancellor keep blocking you for some reason. So KEISHA, what I'm gonna do is ask you to come back in, okay? Okay, come back in. You see, Anthony. What happened is that when people go at the government in this show, somehow we start having some difficulties with hearing them. I don't know why. So we'll see later what is happening. But tell me now, before we go any further, and I'll wait for KEISHA to come before we get going. Let's casually chat. How was the day today? I mean, it was very sunny and nice, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, just following on, it was a good day. I mean, especially when you consider that we've got, I think they predicted around about the sort of 30-32 mark tomorrow. So all in all, with today, tomorrow, and hopefully it will be going into the weekend. I mean, it all sounds like an ideal opportunity to really take advantage of that barbecue, as we all are these days, and get the old food and stuff ready for the inevitable distance sharing of people coming around. But I think the most important thing, to be honest, is that we enjoy the time that we do have off, if that's the case for some of us or most of us these days. And when it is sunshine, that we make the most of it.
Yes. Well, I'm gonna bring back KEISHA. Speak.
Hello. Can you hear me?
No, we cannot hear you. I'm not kidding. We can't hear you. We can hear you loud and
okay, because I'm just about to start protesting, Anyway.
You're gonna protest. So we need to speak to you. How are you anyhow, sir?
I'm doing well. Today has been a very, very productive day. Yes. Working from home as usual. But it seems as if, working from home, it can be mentally taxing.
Yeah.
Because you're behind your computer like 8 o'clock in the morning till late. You just nonstop back to back. So yeah, it has been a very productive day, and I suppose a very good day as well. Yeah.
Well, I must say, I'm going to ask Anthony to come inside here, because Anthony and I were a show about what do you do when you're working from home during COVID. What was the key thing? What's the key advice you give to KEISHA right there, Anthony? Remember the program, we had 6 steps when you're working from home.
Wow,
Mm,
you've really put me on the spot there, Selborne. But I think that for me, the key thing when you're working from home is always to make sure that you set appropriate boundaries and also take appropriate breaks. Because as KEISHA was saying, it's very easy to, when you actually get up in the morning to, be in front of the screen and you're actually there almost, non-stop. And in a way, we actually work more efficiently when we're working from home because we're mindful that we might miss an email.
yeah.
We don't want to miss out on that Zoom call or whatever it is. So we actually spend more time and be more diligent when we're at home than when perhaps we're at the office because we're not disrupted by anybody. So it's important to take those breaks regularly and to make sure that you have that proper work-life balance while you're at home so that you don't end up spending the whole day and going stir crazy looking at a screen.
Yeah, spot on, Anthony. I do need help. I could have taken that advice, should have, but yeah, it's never too late to learn, they say.
and I must say that is something because, over the 6 months, March, since we did that show, I mean, I've been working from home and it sometimes gets a bit too much really, and you do work extra hard. But anyway, I want to touch into this issue here as we go further into that Mark Hancock confirmed that there is a second wave rolling across Europe in regards to COVID. And what's your take on this, guys? Because it seems like people are talking about maybe it is time for the government to start to go back to having these. I'm having some feedback, so I'm just going to mute you slightly, KEISHA from your side, KEIMA from your side, because I sense that's where it's coming from. The government is actually talking. People are talking about they need to be having these meetings back, these prime minister question time or question session, and also they're talking about Spain, the quarantine for Spain. People are talking about we need to start to isolate again. Anthony, is it that this is happening again? Is it like the whole COVID is coming? It seems like we are back on this start. I don't know.
Well, I think, clearly what the government are trying to do this time, Selborne, is they're trying to be proactive. They realised when the initial COVID outbreak started that they were caught very much on the back foot. And there was a lot of criticism that they've taken, and rightly so, because they weren't well prepared in a number of areas, and of which I'm sure you've probably discussed on the show many times before. So I think what they're doing this time is they're being overly cautious, and they're noticing the spikes that have been taking place in the UK that they've announced today. I think there was 30 different locations, and they're also seeing an upturn in incidences in spikes also in European cities. And what they don't want to be criticised of is this time not acting appropriately. So now they're being more proactive and they're taking action straight away and not waiting for really things to get worse before they actually, finally, say to people, look, we now have to reimpose some certain conditions. So I think they're trying to be proactive and actually take the initiative away from anyone who says to them that this time they were caught sleeping.
Yes. KEISHA, KEIMA, if you can come in here, what's your take on it?
Well, I don't know if KEIMA will agree with me, given that she's been going to work, but I'm just sensing that there's we're receiving mixed messaging from the government. So on one hand, you're told get back to work, get out there, get back to normality, just wear your mask and observe the social distancing rules. And then on the other hand, what we're seeing or observing is, an increased number of cases within certain areas. Certain localized areas has been locked down, and so I'm just concerned by what we're hearing.
Yeah, KEISHA.
Yeah.
KEIMA.
Well, I'll totally agree with it. I think there is a sense that there is mixed messaging from the government at the moment, and I think what the government has done essentially now is to give the onus on employers to decide and push the employers now, I believe, to take more responsibility for safety at work, safety in the workplace. Because and some days you get some advice from the government to say that, most people should stay at home. And then the other day you hear everybody should get back out to work. And I think you see a lot of big businesses now, Google in particular, TUI and another one, who are pretty much saying, well, we would prefer employees to stay at home, at least stay at home for another year or so, because that would give us enough time to see this pandemic pass and make more rational decisions. But I think there's an urgency, I believe, now from the government because of the economic crisis that we're currently in, and we're going to get a lot more deeper in the next couple of weeks and months. And so they're trying to do a balancing act here, which obviously is which one you prioritize, the health of the nation or the economic situation. And I think that's the reason why we're hearing such a number of different mixed messages coming through from the government.
Anthony, the prognosis of getting into a lockdown again and the economy, because the economy has become a bit very frail as a result. What do you say about that? I mean, it's a touchy one, isn't it?
Well, it is a touchy one, and as KEIMA has just outlined, it is a balancing act that the government are now walking, in the sense of, they want to see people go back to work, but as has been mentioned, there has been mixed messages in the sense of, they're making these concessions around vouchers, around, saying to people, like, in terms of the buses now, that the buses can take more people, etc. So they are making mixed messages in one sense, but equally, despite them actually saying that the UK is now back open for business and people should go to work, I think there's a fear element that is also creeping into people now. So you've got the fear that people are saying, well, actually, I'm sure if I should go back. And as KEIMA has already outlined, there is this onus on employers wondering whether or not they need to take staff back because they've realised how efficient things have been. And actually, some of them now are looking at it from a point of view of basically not economics. Do I need people to be in all of these fancy buildings that I've got around the UK? And then equally, you've got the other strand whereby people are now becoming more accustomed to working from home. Companies can see the benefit of working from home, and so therefore, despite all these initiatives by the government, the employees and the employers themselves aren't really encouraging staff to go in. So by doing that, unfortunately, the industries that benefit from the footfall that comes from people going into, malls and all those places that normally benefit from footfall of traffic, these businesses are suffering because there's no one there to actually buy the products.
Yeah, exactly. So therefore, what we're actually seeing then is this possible new norm, which may exist. And this new norm may, in a way, somewhat. Sorry, I'm just hearing a feedback. This new norm may somewhat be the new norm, whereby working practices may have to change, isn't it? Businesses who are relying on footfall will have to change, because I'm just reading here, and the article actually, this is actually saying, what it is saying is that you should start to isolate again. People who test positive for coronavirus or show symptoms in the UK must now self-isolate for these 10 days rather than 7. It's starting over, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is starting over, and I don't know if KEIMA or KEISHA want to jump in. I mean, it is starting over, but as I said, I mean, the government wants to try and be cautious. They don't want to cause a panic, because if they suddenly implement a complete lockdown as they did before, it's taken 3 or 4 months, as we have now, for people to get used to this lockdown situation, and it's going to take a considerable amount of time for people to actually be confident to come out. If they lock the country down again, people will more or less say, you know what, I'll just simply work from home permanently now, and you'll see a mass decline in the economy in terms of shops, and more shops having to go out of business because there'll be no customers to actually go in and buy the products.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right, Anthony. I think at this stage, the government needs to take a more of a consistent approach. They would have already conducted an assessment between, the health risk and the economic risk associated with this pandemic, and we already see the number of deaths because of the pandemic. And I think the safer option would be, therefore, to take a more of a drastic approach, which therefore is going back into the lockdown for a longer period, and observe the matter more closely, rather than actually having these mixed messages. So I think is at the moment is one or the other, and I think I'm erring more on the side of caution, which is given that they're more likely to be a second wave, And we've already seen a number of cases in, places like Northampton, Leicester, Luton, and so on. We might as well go back into this lockdown and, extend this lockdown for a longer period of time and observe what's happening around us, rather than risk actually having an increasing wave because people are now going back and socializing and so on. So yeah, that would be my approach. What's your thoughts,
KEIMA?
Well, I just think it's such a big dilemma. It's a heavy weight on the nation to carry. I mean, it's already over 30 billion, I think it was, the government has already spent on the furlough scheme alone, and it's going to get worse. And the thing about it is that whilst people have been at home, employers are looking and thinking, well, do we really need all these jobs? And, it's going to get worse in the next couple of weeks and next couple of months. So in some ways, the government's going to have to come up with some drastic measures in terms of to wean people back from the furlough, wean people back, get people back into work in some ways. So it's a very challenging and difficult situation, and it's difficult in terms of where you go from here.
Okay, Anthony just popped out and came back. I'm sure he didn't say anything against the government as to why he was maybe taken out. But this is very interesting because with the whole COVID thing, and when Anthony comes back, Anthony has been doing some work also regarding the NHS, because it is just as the NHS is getting a bit of reprieve now and sort of chilling now, and now they're actually marching on Downing Street that they want more money as well. And Anthony did this petition whereby he sought to get the government to make a day for workers and the NHS workers and frontline staff as well. But the key thing now that we're looking at is a lot of people are actually suffering, especially financially at this time. KEIMA, you're in HR, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, what is it like in HR? What are they actually saying? Is HR now sort of accommodating, looking at ways how they can actually accommodate this new type of working practices?
I think HR in some ways in early 70s, 80s, they've used to be called personnel. And a lot of HR moved from personnel in some ways to business partners, so more aligned with the business. And I think now since COVID, there is a lot of HRs having to open up and look out for their employees a lot more. So, business as a whole actually needs to be a lot more open. Where I believe in the past where employers have been very hesitant when it comes to flexible working and people working from home, I think COVID has shown us that really that was just a reluctance to accommodate different options of working. COVID has shown us that flexible working and working from home in a big way can actually work and doesn't hamper the activity or productivity of staff, but also it opens up opportunities for creativity, I believe, as well in the workplace. I was very much impressed in some of the creative ways that some employers have come up with in terms of getting people back to work following the one-way system, putting those measures in place. So you have people the seating plans in place to accommodate people and make people feel safe as well. So there's a bit of a flexibility as well, openness and being creative and innovative as well. You see a lot of people now realizing that, particular employers are realizing that, we don't have to work the same way as we've always worked before. People don't always have to come into shops. They could actually buy online. And you see the ones that are doing much better are the ones who actually have expanded their business online. And it means as well that, there's going to be a lot of change in the shopping malls now going forward, shopping centers going forward, because for example, we used to have to go in, not have to, but we're used to going into travel agencies. Now people are changing the activities of how we shop, and everything now is going online. So it's HR in itself has to be a lot more flexible flexible, creative, innovative, but also there's a welfare side of it. We are very mindful that people working from home for a very long time could create a lot of mental health situations as well, difficult times, especially people who have the working environment is a very good environment to interact with people on a daily basis. And I think a lot of times we've taken that for granted, being able to speak to people face to face and to be at home and being isolated. Sometimes it's not effective for some people. So there's a measuring up and sort of identifying. And I think there's a lot of communication that needs to be happening between employees and employers as well. What feels best. Because some employees, particularly if you're a parent, it might be suitable for you to be working from home. But if you're not, if you're a lone person, it might be ideal for you to come into the office. So I think there's a lot of conversations around that. But HR is having to play a pivotal role in trying to support employees.
Well, I just got a breaking news came in a while ago. Virus lockdown tightened for separate households meeting indoors in Greater Manchester, East Lancashire, and parts of West Yorkshire. Breaking news: virus lockdown tightened for separate households meeting indoors in Greater Manchester, East Lancashire, and parts of West Yorkshire. I mean, what this is saying now is, I mean, it's like I'm invited, like for argument's sake, to meet with some guys and look at some certain things now, and you're wondering now, should you relax? Should you relax? Churches are now getting ready to open up. Should you relax?
I mean, so this go back to my initial point about mixed messaging. You know, we were just on the verge of opening up. You know, the churches, for example, we've already opened up, encourage people to go back into work, and now we're actually seeing a spike again in certain constituencies or certain areas. So there is a need, as I can only reiterate, for consistency in the messengers, and it seems to me that given that there is there's a spike, or at least there's there's likely to be a second wave, we need to do and act promptly and quickly, and we need to take a robust approach. And I would actually reiterate again that there's a need to, I don't want to go say shut down the country again, but we have to just take extreme measures because I live by a simple principle. I live by a simple principle. Prevention is better than cure, and we let us prevent any possible pandemic that spiral out of control again. So let us actually lock down the country. I know it's a very extreme approach because people has been been locked in for a long time, and I know KEIMA touch on the mental health issue or the mental health point there. People being in isolation for a long time, but at this moment in time, safety is paramount, and therefore we, as a government, I would actually suggest to the government that implement an emergency approach, ask everyone to actually stay within or remain within their homes for the time being until actually we observe what's happening around us. Yeah. That's what I would suggest.
Well, I'll ask, ladies and gentlemen, Dean, thank you for coming on and commenting. For what would you do at this time? Are you happy to go back to work at this time, ladies and gentlemen? I would like to hear your comments. Are you happy to go back into lockdown? I mean, people are just getting free now. I mean, I was on the road earlier and I see so many young people. It's summer, tops are off. I mean, car tops are off, and everybody's just really getting back to normal. But it seems like this whole thing is just, COVID is just rising its head again.
Yeah, I mean, SYLBOURNE, you just mentioned Manchester. Isn't that correct? Manchester,
yeah.
Yeah, so we had last week we have localized lockdown areas in Leicester, Luton, Northampton, Blackburn, now Manchester. I mean, look at what's happening. I mean, we don't need a scientist or an expert to tell us this pandemic again is spreading. Yeah. Let us curb it. Let us bring it to let us reduce the numbers and do it quickly and swiftly. And I think that's that would be my advice to the government. Yes. I mean, I appreciate KEIMA's point. KEIMA touched specifically on the fact that people have been isolated for a long time. KEIMA touched on the point of the mental health issues around it. KEIMA touched on the point of there's an economic aspect to this where people the implication this will have on the economy. I appreciate that, but when you weigh it up, and this is all about risk assessment, And when you weigh it up, you realize that we're still in a crisis. Let us not pretend that we're not. We're still in a crisis. And therefore, we need to act as if we're in a crisis. And we need to curb the numbers as soon as possible.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I think all of us as a whole need to take responsibility for our actions. And I think as well, where the government could do so much and no more. Essentially, I think if we're going to be going out, it's now mandatory that you wear your face mask, as much as it's very uncomfortable to do so. I think we need to put measures in place, all of us, in ways to remind ourselves how important it is to carry your face mask when you're going into shops. You're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting one another and your family, especially you have individuals within your household who are shielding, who have underlying issues and so suffer. And also as well, I mean, the other day we've heard of there's a pub who had over 200 people, and now they're looking for those individuals because of course there was a spread of the coronavirus at this pub. And so we still need to be aware. We need to be very mindful of some of the places that we go and realize that we can't be. We have to keep a very safe distance from when we go out, or particularly try and stay away as much as possible.
So therefore, what we're talking about is a possibility of a full lockdown coming back again.
Yeah.
What can I say? Well, let's move on quickly until Anthony comes back. It is 100. It's a year now since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister, right? It's not 100 days. He became Prime Minister, and there's lots of discussion as to how has he been? Has he been good or has he been bad? What's your take on the Prime Minister? And you can say what you want. You know, I mean, don't worry if you get kicked out or whatever like that. Well,
KEISHA, you want to go?
I'll go with you, KEISHA, first. What's your verdict on Boris so far?
Well, I mean, this is quite an interesting one. I was hoping KEIMA go first because I know she's a fan. My position on Boris is, within a year, it's difficult to assess how he's done. I think you need a good 5 years for a person to be in government to say whether they've actually done well or not. We have to take into account
100 days. Only 100 days or a year.
Yeah, I know, but that's what they say. But sometimes I think you need a little longer period of time, because I think the first 100 years, and KEIMA, you're the political activist, so you're I suppose you're the expert at this. But in my opinion, SYLBOURNE, the first 100 years is only like settling down into the government, in government, trying to familiarize yourself with the systems or, regulations or rules or whatever you do. The first 100 years, it's like starting a job. The first few days, you need to familiarize yourself with the policies and the procedures and so on. So, but anyway, that's a side point. When it comes to Boris, I was one of those people who were rooting for him. Within 100 years, 100 days, 100 days, I'm just not as excited as I used to be regarding him. And I don't know if I should blame him. That's my reservation about the whole thing. I'm not 100% certain if I should really blame him, or perhaps I do need to take into account or consideration the multitude of issues that he's been burdened with, just coming into the government. I mean, no one would have predicted, for example, this pandemic. No one could have predicted that. The handling of it, we could step back now and have a number of criticisms. I could put forward my criticism as to handle the COVID. I mean, I'm not part of the government, so I could tell you the truth. I personally don't feel that it was handled well. It could have been handled better. He probably should have chosen, different advisors when it comes to the pandemic. But then at the same time, within 100 years, he kept a number of promises. Well, not number, one particular promise, which is, of course, let us get out of Brexit. He's done that, so let's tick that box. So there are other promises that he made. He said that he was going to put 20,000 police back on the streets. That hasn't happened. But then again, you don't expect that to happen within 100 days, would you? Think about it. Yeah. One of the the promises that I was really hoping that he implement, and again, I do probably need to give him some time, is around his fixing of the social care services.
Yes.
And I want him to do more regarding the providing social care for clearly the elderly. Especially there's complication between the NHS service and and social care service, and he promised that he was going to fix that. He promised that he will help this help the social care crisis, sort it out. But again, what we've seen in during the pandemic, there was a lack of PPE. I personally, and this is just my opinion, that possibly increased the numbers of deaths within the care home. I believe that at some point there needs to be an investigation into that. So I don't think he actually honored his promise or came through on his promise when it comes to providing extra support to the care to social care services. But at the same time, it's only 100 days.
But
so
also,
that's it.
But also, you do appreciate that the whole process has been hijacked by the advent of COVID. That is,
absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. I have to take that into consideration.
And plus, he almost died as a result of COVID. So therefore, I think it is how I think one of the interesting thing at this time, and it's the reason why maybe they're moving so swiftly now, is that they have learned because of the uncharted waters which they came in. And I'm not sort of covering any areas where they went wrong, but I believe just like even in Jamaica now, whereby they're doing their best that they can, everybody's seeking to do the best that they can at this time. Even to the advent of Spain suffering, the UK is wanting to make sure that they're protecting their borders in the sense of COVID to not have this massive groundswell again. Is that a fair assessment, KEIMA? I mean, sorry, I don't want to put words in the mouth of the Prime Minister.
Well, I think it would have been always, regardless of who in government, it would have always been difficult. And I think that's the fundamental fact, and that's where we need to begin with. I think nobody, as KEISHA mentioned, could have predicted the COVID crisis, and nobody knows how any possible leader would have been able to handle the crisis. So it's a very, very difficult one. And for me, I think when we look at Boris and we think to ourselves, we've got to reflect that when he came in on a very momentous victory, if you want to put it that way. We had Theresa May before that, and Theresa May struggled when handled the Brexit negotiations with Europe. And he came in and he managed to win us over some confidence. And I think that's what the country was actually struggling with before. And so we're quite delighted to see that he came in the back of that and was able to take control over Brexit and was able to have us leave the European Union as he promised in October last year. So I think that's in a view in itself is a very win-win. But that around the same time, my understanding as well is that that's when we had the notification that there was going to be a pandemic on the rise, and the government was a bit lackluster, and very much so, in managing and handling that and organizing PPEs for the NHS and for the care workers and the key workers. And we've struggled as a country in terms of getting on the front foot for it. I mean, now we are probably the worst in Europe in terms of the number of deaths. So when we weigh all of this up, and it's obviously quite early. I still think it's very much quite early to sort of make an overall judgment on how he is doing. But I think some of those key areas make you wonder really how he's handled some of those, and I think for a leader, that's how you judge a leader, isn't it? Handling big situations and how you lead in those situations. So we got two situations there, which I think one that he led very well on, which had to do with Brexit, but also with COVID. I don't think he's handled it very well, but then you could never be certain how it'll be handled. And for me as well, I think I've got to mention Black Lives Matters, because I don't think he showed leadership when he came to Black Lives Matters. I think he was a bit hesitant in terms of handling that. He did came out in the end and mentioned and talked about diversity and Black people, which I think he was a little bit late. But I think in the end he came out on that. I think he lost some credibility, particularly when it comes to Black and ethnic minority, particularly those who have voted for him around there. And also, I think further on, if you mentioned about, KEISHA mentioned about the social care, I think it was very devastating, I believe, as well for the health service, the nurses in particular, who weren't going to be given a pay increase. And those are the ones who worked tirelessly throughout COVID. And so there was a lot of questions around his leadership and how he's done over the first 100 years. But he's accomplished, I think what he's accomplished for a Brexit, it's good.
Yes. So therefore, what we can simply say then that on July the 24th, 2019, 18 years of political blundering, lies and scandals, as some articles say, Boris Johnson then became the Prime Minister eventually. And I think I've got Anthony. Anthony, I don't know what happened there. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, you didn't say anything against the Prime Minister, did you? You didn't say anything against the Prime Minister. Oh,
yeah, the Prime Minister, I've got a lot to say against the Prime Minister, if I'm honest.
Please, yeah, go straight for it. Because we're talking about his assessment so far.
His track record.
Yeah, well, listen, 100 days in office, and quite frankly, it's been 100 days of bluster and really indecision. You have to look back to the Dominic Cummings
situation there, yeah? Okay.
Oh, dear.
Let me see. Okay, he's back. Is he back, Anthony? I'm looking at.
That's what happens when you criticize the government on this show.
No, yeah.
Can you see me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I'll just repeat what I was just saying very quickly. 100 days in office. Dominic Cummings scandal, where you've got an advisor have been more powerful than the Prime Minister. You've got the COVID meetings where he missed the 5 briefings when everything started. You've got, his situation where sadly he was getting a divorce, where he was obviously finalising things at Chequers. All of these things shows that he was obviously a leader that wasn't really at the helm running the show when things were taking off on the COVID crisis. And I think what it has shown is in this particular situation is that you've got a really pantomime Prime Minister who doesn't really have a really good brief in terms of what's really going on. And I think he's been elected on a ticket to get Brexit done. He's done that, and really he's got nothing else to offer.
So what you're trying to say now, like Nigel Farage, when Nigel Farage was trying to get Brexit done, somewhat you see Nigel Farage out there in the desert. He has no relevance now. Is it? Are you saying it's somewhat similar to the Prime Minister? Get Brexit done, and now Brexit is done. That's it.
Well, I'm not saying it's similar, but I'm simply saying that if you look at what he was requested or what he was elected to do, he's done it. So really now you've got to wonder to yourself, what is his value? Because he clearly isn't showing himself as being a leader of the country at this particular moment in time. He's going to be judged on the COVID crisis now, isn't he? And so far he's found himself to be wanting. So I think we have to look at his performance over these last 100 days, and we have to assess it and say to ourselves, what have we learned from Boris Johnson as a Prime Minister? Is he somebody who commands statesman-like? Is he someone who commands authority? Or is he someone who really we've now found out to be really quite literally a bit of hot air and bluster?
Well, you got one fan there, which is Shelley and Myra. She says, I'm with Anthony. But also James Singleton has come on and said, I have an opinion. You won't be surprised to know I disagree wholeheartedly with the current comment from the gentleman.
Yeah, I mean, let me support James on this, not to a certain degree, not wholeheartedly. I mean, to a certain degree. I mean, I find it difficult to make a full assessment on somebody based on just 100 days. Anthony, I mean, seriously, 100 days, and you're completely just saying that he's incompetent, not fit for purpose, not fit for government.
Sorry, can I just clarify something? On July the 24th, 2019, he became the Prime Minister, but the election is now into 100 days. I think we need to clarify that he's been a Prime Minister for a year. Remember?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So Anthony, just a correction. Maybe it's strengthened Anthony's case because it's not really 100 days. It's actually 1 year.
Yeah. Well, listen. I mean, you're right. In terms of giving an assessment over somebody for 100 days or 365 days in their particular role, I think what we have to do is look at what he's done, what has been his contribution during that period. And we've had some significant incidences in the UK right now with COVID and the like. And we've seen from this Prime Minister that he hasn't really brought the country with him. He's been dithering, he's had indecision. And I think what we have learned from our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is that he relies on advisors and cannot make his own mind up. I mean, look, you only have to look at the border situation with COVID. Since the COVID crisis has started, what border checks have we done? We've done none. You know, we're probably the only country in Europe that doesn't have any effective border controls. Whose responsibility is that? It's got to be the Prime Minister. He elects all his officials, and he's been found to be wanting. So that's how I'm judging him, based on activities now, where we can really judge the person's character not by what he says, but what he does.
But as what James Singleton is saying, that taking COVID for example, as an example, need to actually realize that it's medical experts advised the government that guided their action. I mean, the guy almost died, Anthony. The guy didn't really. It's like everything was not on all fours at this time, because everything was sort of interrupted by this COVID experience and the fact that he was actually, he had COVID. I mean,
look, I do sympathise with the fact that he caught the virus, like many other people caught it, and many people have died from this. But as I go back, as I said at the beginning, I think what really we have to judge Boris Johnson is the actions that he's taken during this period. And he's had the Windrush issues to deal with, which has been pushed under the carpet. We've had the COVID issues now. He hasn't really shown himself to be someone who actually who stands by his word. I mean, he was out there clapping for the NHS the other day, but yet on the same time he wants to deport people, nurses who are over here as not illegal immigrants, but people who are working here from overseas, and charge them higher taxes. So you have to look at what he actually does, what his government does, and does it match the words that he actually he says? And quite frankly, I don't think it does.
Well, fair enough. What Anthony is actually saying is something which is reflected within the community, the UK. So it's nothing new. You hear it every day. Any last word on that before I go on to NHS? Because I want to tap onto what Anthony just said a while ago about the NHS and the work that they're doing. Any last word on Boris? What's your count? What's your out of 1 to 10? 10 being excellent.
Well, I think I'll give him a 5 if I was to judge him, because obviously I think 100 days is still a bit soon. But I think there's been a lot of distraction for him on a personal level, in terms of course, he himself he wasn't very well. He got married, he got divorced. Sorry, he got engaged and divorced and the baby, all of that, and still managing COVID and the crisis and everything that's going on. So I think it's a bit of it's still a bit early, I believe, to analyze and sort of make a decision on how he's performing so far.
KEISHA, do you give him, what do you give, 1 out of 10? What's your number?
Well, I'll give him a C+. I like that. C+. C+, because C+ to me is that he hasn't failed, but he hasn't done well enough to actually get my stars yet. But he's actually getting there in terms of I have to give him a high marks for the furlough scheme. Actually, remembering or thinking about the employees and actually coming up or implementing the furlough scheme. So I think that to me is very important within the in terms of managing the COVID crisis. So, but I think again, 100 days or 365 days. I don't know if it's sufficient. I don't think so. But I do take Anthony's point. There's a lot of areas that he went wrong.
Yes.
But I believe that given the right advisors, and Anthony, we do need advisors around us. So absolutely nothing wrong with actually having advisors, but I do think he needs to get the right advisors around him to get to move the country forward.
Okay, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, James, Shelley, and Mary, and also people on the other side. Dean, what's your verdict? 1 out of 10, 10 excellent for the Prime Minister, 1 very bad. What's your verdict? So let me hear that. Anthony, tell us about the NHS, because you have been on a campaign as well to give some kudos to the frontline workers. If you can explain that, and I'll just play a video once you explain that briefly. Yeah.
Yeah, Rick. So in summary, what I've been trying to do is get an annual day of recognition for the NHS staff and the key workers, really to acknowledge the fact that they've made such a sacrifice, not just through this COVID crisis, through the support they've given us, but also just in general that, you know, they're an organisation and key workers who we normally take for granted. And I think it's appropriate that we don't fail to remember them. And I've been trying to get an annual day so far for next year, which has gone into Parliament now. And we've got about 106,000 people that have signed the petition.
Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, as a result of getting that number of 100,000, it qualifies this particular petition to be read in Parliament. Yes, Anthony?
Indeed, yes. And I believe it was, and I think it was actually by my local MP, Janet Darby, did manage to raise it with the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, last week. And I think you've got a clip that you might be playing.
Yes. Let me just play this clip briefly in a second. Let me just put it up there. 1, 2, and here we go. You just bear with me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen.
Janet Davey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We cannot praise enough carers, key workers and NHS staff during this pandemic, and of course in Leicester. My constituent Anthony Francis launched a petition for a national day of recognition for our NHS and key workers. He proposes the 26th of March, which was the first day of Clap for Our Carers. The petition reached over 100,000 signatures from across the country. Will the Secretary of State commit to this?
Well, I'll certainly look at it. It seems like a very interesting idea. I think Clap for Our Carers was a absolutely brilliant initiative. I love the fact that it was essentially it was a social initiative. It didn't come from government. We embraced it enthusiastically and all went out clapping, as did everybody. And a way to mark that permanently is something that I'm absolutely open to.
Okay. So that was the petition there. Anthony, what's the next phase then as a result of that?
So the next phase is that myself and Janet Darby are trying to arrange a photo opportunity at number 10. Unfortunately, because of COVID, they've restricted the number of petitions that can be handed in. And we're also now looking to try and get some cross-party support from the House in order to try and actually get Matt Hancock to follow up on what he actually said, that he would look into it and maybe take it further forward. Okay, and you're very passionate about this because your family, your wife, is also in the front line as well. That's right. My wife's a mental health nurse, and like many other NHS workers, when she was in the, on the ward this week, having to wear PPE and obviously safeguard herself. But on another point, my family members, my father is in receipt of care support 3 times a day, 3-4 times a day. So I've seen firsthand, just how valuable these individuals are, and I certainly don't take them for granted. And in fact, I'd like to see carers on the same pay as our NHS workers, to be honest. KEISHA, KEIMA, anything to add on that, on this bit here?
Yes. Well done, Anthony. I think that's a great gesture. It's like you have clap for the carers or NHS workers, and now we have this potentiality, and I think it's a really good idea, mainly because the COVID pandemic is what comes out of it. I think the byproduct is that there are people all over the country who have this new appreciation for the work that the NHS workers and carers have been doing, and we need to keep that momentum. And I think what you're doing will support that. Hopefully, people will become more engaged with what's happening within the social care community. So I think that's a great gesture, and you touch on the point which I was going to raise. But not only should we be looking at applauding and recognizing their work by actually giving them a day, we actually should recognize their work by actually increasing their pay, their wage. And I think there needs to be a simultaneous campaign. And I know there's conversations around that, but there needs to be ongoing campaign to lift the salaries of, care workers, mental health nurses generally, because that to me will actually have a greater impact on individual lives. Actually, those people who are going into work and actually risking their life for us, they'll be more, encouraged knowing that, we recognize them through pay.
And also, I believe there had been a demonstration, if I'm not mistaken, today or maybe yesterday at number 10 or Whitehall to get the key workers to have an increase in wages as well. So I believe, as you said, clapping is clapping and clapping is clapping. Clapping doesn't actually fill your belly, isn't it, Anthony? KEIMA.
I couldn't put it any better than that, Selborne. Clapping, but people need to pay their bills.
Yes.
Yeah.
KEIMA, any last word on that bit there?
No, I just think it's a fantastic idea. I think it's great. I think anything to remind us how what's a brilliant work the NHS and carers do it's very, very fantastic. And I think for a while, if it wasn't for COVID, a lot of us sometimes take it for granted that they actually put themselves on the line. A lot of them put themselves on the line. And I think we need to remember that. I think this is a very, very, very good way of doing that.
I want to move quickly and swiftly on, as time is going against us at the same time, but I believe we cannot move without saying something about Wiley. The grime artist Wiley has been at the center of a racism storm following anti-Semitic tweets that saw him permanently removed from Twitter and dropped by his management. They always say this, that Black people cannot be racist. Can Black people be racist then? I don't know who want to take that one first. Can Black people be racist?
Well, no, I'll go up first. Listen, Black people can be racist. I mean, and Black people can also have bias. I mean, this isn't an exclusive thing for other races. I think in Wiley's case, unfortunately, it's a topic which is very sensitive to the Labour Party and the wider community as a whole. And no point coming out after the event and saying that, he's not racist when we can all hear what he said or read in his tweets. So I think it's no surprise that he's been dropped by his management company and he's been stopped by Twitter and by Facebook or other social media outlets. And quite frankly, if he was doing it for publicity, it's backfired.
Yes. KEISHA?
Well, I would say that Black people are human beings, and therefore they will have biases and prejudices. So it is what it is. But with regarding Wiley, there is a bigger conversation to be had here, and that is around the social media etiquette. When you're online and when you're a celebrity, you hold a greater responsibility, and you have to be a lot more cautious with what you say and how you express yourself. Now, there's a balance that between freedom of expression and hate speech. And clearly, if you're going to sprout anything or write anything that's going to cause harm or hurt to somebody, you really shouldn't be doing that. You should actually think twice about actually publishing things online. And I think, unfortunately, he wasn't advised. But then again, you'll think that's common sense. So I think we probably need to do so. No, and it's serious. It's a serious matter where somebody who holds an MBE somehow haven't thought twice. There's a basic way, that I've learned a while ago, that if your manager was to say something to you and you don't like what the person says, instead of actually going and write an email and send it off, you write the email, leave it for about a couple of hours or a day or two, and come back and look at it and revisit it. And then obviously you ask yourself whether is it worth publishing or sending it off. Likewise, you have a whole lot of fans. You are a celebrity. Everybody listen and hear what you have to say. Nothing actually dawned on him that perhaps maybe I should ask somebody about this before I publish it. I mean, how do we get so full of ourselves that we could just say what we like online and think about it and think it's acceptable and don't care how it impact or affect somebody else? I think there's a sense of irresponsibility there. And I think that there's a need, don't know if you want to take on the campaign still, but somebody needs to start advising people publicly that this cannot go on because people do have feelings.
And KEISHA?
Well, for me, I take the look at it. I mean, he made a comment about the whole Jewish community, and then he apologized. He said he shouldn't have generalized. But I think to myself, I mean, we in the Black community for a while, we looked at this and we think, how many times do you hear they criticize Black boys, Black women, black men. And there is no learning at all. And you think somebody as the status of Wiley will fully understand that, you don't treat people that way. You don't treat the whole community in the same way. You don't say the same thing. It doesn't make absolutely any sense at all. And so I think what happened, the fact that social media having to ban him, the cancel culture, if you want to put it that way, I think it's just right. So, I mean, you heard a lot of debate going the last couple of days about if it was racism to be towards a black person who wouldn't have been cancelled so quickly. But that, to me, that argument is very irrelevant. Wrong is wrong and right is right. And the way I see it is that you don't treat people that way. You don't say things like that on social media, regardless of what race or color you are. And I think it should not be acceptable in any form or way.
The interesting thing that I see regarding this, and Nick Cannon, it happened in the States whereby it was dropped in a similar nature because of anti-Semitic comments. Wiley as well. And then also there's this doctor who is going around saying some things about a particular product in order to help people with COVID. And everybody's just being dropped. And one of the things that I've been looking at is, it is as if, okay, with freedom of expression, there is responsibility. That is correct. But at the same time, it is like people are not being allowed to also speak and to share their thoughts on certain things. And for a level of maturity in discussion, is as if to say that we should not be able to think things through, or we have become so easily offended. Anthony, you use Twitter a lot, and I watch you on Twitter and stuff like that. But you say it in a way whereby one cannot say it's rude. You're expressing yourself. You know what I mean? But
I think as KEIMA has outlined, I mean, you to be honest, I don't think it really matters if you're a celebrity or if you're an individual. You should appreciate the etiquette of what you say. And yes, you do have freedom of speech on these platforms, but it doesn't give you the platform to actually abuse people or be racist towards them. So at the end of the day, Wiley I'd like to think he's an educated person. He obviously appreciates the background of black people, and you'd think he'd be more sensitive to what he was saying about the Jewish community. So for me, yes, I do comment a lot on Twitter, but as you say, I mean, I'm never disrespectful to people. I simply might replay what they have said, and I might put a different slant on it. But I make sure that I don't say anything that can come back to me that was either rude, that was racist, or actually was actually a blatant lie. So I use the platform for what it's there for, which is to express my point of view, but I do so in a polite and a forceful way.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. And one of the things he said, though, which is where he shouted in one of the interviews, "Take back the MBE," because the MBE is a member of the British Empire. And the MBE, is it that relevant today? The Empire. Who's KEIMA? The Queen is calling to get an MBE. Are you going for it?
I wouldn't say no.
KEISHA, you going for the MBE?
Of course. I think things have changed, and I understand the argument, I believe, from Benjamin, what's his name? Zephaniah? Yeah,
Benjamin Zephaniah, yes.
Yeah, I know he spoke about that, and not accepting the MBE. But as far as I'm concerned, if the Queen called me up, I'm going to say thank you very much, Queen, and I'll do my my kneeling or whatever I got to do to get that. But yeah, I mean, because I think things have changed, and people see it for not just for the oppression of blacks or slavery. People see as this country, the United Kingdom, is appreciating your achievement and actually recognizing your achievement. I think in these times, I believe that's what generally people see when someone actually get an award by the Queen. They're recognizing your achievement. And so exactly, as far as I'm concerned, if the Queen wished to reward me, I'll say thank you very much, Your Honor.
Well, I got a Team Silburn with a sage comment. That's exactly the problem. You can express yourself provided it's agreeable. Anthony, what has been happening each week? KEISHA keep getting Team KEISHA. So I got Team Silburn this time, which is not so bad. It's interesting. This is a subject which is so toxic in a way that I considered twice whether I should say anything about it, because it's like someone said to me, Silburn, be very careful. We're going so far now. Please don't go into Facebook jail. Don't say anything untoward, But Anthony, don't you guys think that we're becoming like somewhat like sheep, in a sense whereby we've got to be so careful? I understand about respect. I understand that bit, but there's a sense of we've got to toe a particular line, and we cannot really think a lot for ourselves.
Well, to be honest, I don't agree with that. I think we can think for ourselves, and I think we can express ourselves in a way which is courteous and to the point. I think, what I've said before is it doesn't mean that you have to be rude or you have to be offensive in order to get your point across. If your point is well put and it actually makes any sense, it will get the cut through. You don't need to add all the other bits that maybe, grabs the headlines the following day. So for me, I don't think people are like sheep. I think the platforms that are out there are a very good platform for people to express their views. And it does allow for very good discourse overall when people can actually contribute and maybe share things that maybe people hadn't thought of. I just think people need to be respectful and do so in an appropriate way that doesn't cause offense.
Well, I guess that is fair because, I always say to people, and I say to Nick Cannon, unless you pay the bills, you're not the boss. Is that a fair comment? Unless you pay the bills, you're not the boss. You got to toe the line, isn't it?
Well, you've got to toe the line anyway, haven't you? I mean, you just got to behave yourself. I mean, nobody wants to be hauled up like Wiley is now as an example of somebody who perhaps has overstretched or overstepped the mark. So I think it's just a cautious tale to anybody. Don't be rude, don't be racist, and get your point across in a more meaningful way.
Yes. Anyway, and the last word now, guys. We're going to wrap up now. In regards to this, KEISHA or KEIMA, you wanted to say something about unemployment. I think we sort of touched on it a bit. I don't know if you want to say that. Time is against us, but if you want to quickly touch on that.
No, I was just going to mention in terms of the employment levels and sort of the dire situation that we're going to be in the next couple of weeks, particularly when the furlough scheme comes to the end in October. Way more likely that the employment levels will spike. At the moment, it's about 2.6 million people are unemployed. And I just thought I wanted to mention that and how I'm grateful, I suppose you are, if you're in employment at the moment. You should be very grateful because, of course, it'll be very difficult for the next couple of months.
And that's very interesting. And it leads back to what we're talking about with the lockdown. Because, I mean, Anthony, KEIMA, if the lockdown does come back, you're going to talk about, hey, does this furlough thing has got to increase as well? It's got to continue.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be a very good point, SYLBOURNE. Just in closing, the Chancellor has already mentioned that he can't go on past October, and quite frankly, the cost that it's costing the government to pay for all of these staff is astronomical. But at the end of the day, they did actually tell the country stay at home. So if you're going to tell people to stay at home, you've got to provide them with the means in which they can stay at home. And so it's up to the government. If they do another lockdown, they've got to put their hand back in their pocket, the same way they did for the bailout of the banks when they managed to mismanage the economy many years ago. So, you can't have one rule for one and one rule for the other.
Yeah, completely agree with you, Anthony. There is still money on that money tree.
And this is what people say a lot. Where are they getting all this money from? Where are they getting all this money from?
You remember they had this, I don't know if you remember it, KEIMA or Anthony, but there was a statement the Conservative Party had said a couple of years ago where they've got to fix the roof when the sun is shining or something like that. They made this statement, and so they've been fixing the roof for years and they've been containing that money. So now they've got all that money on the money tree, and so therefore they need to spend it because we're in a crisis. So that's what I think.
That's it.
I see my comment is trending even on Instagram. Unless you pay the bills, you're not the boss. Unless you pay, you're not the boss as well.
Is that what you tell your children, isn't it?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Anthony, Dr. Burton should be joining me on Instagram for the after show session. Anthony, it's an after show session, not an after show party. It is going over to Instagram and do a review as well, We are happy to come on to Instagram as well. And to, I want to say Anthony's got this book called Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. Think It, Plan It, Do It Now. It's an active, proactive book. Once you get into it, you can't put it down because you're going to think it, plan it, do it now. It's all active. Anthony, I'm plugging the book, but just tell people about the book a bit and how they can get all of it.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that plug, SYLBOURNE. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on direct from my website. It's on Kindle, so it's available on all those usual platforms. And as Selborne said, it's the title of the book is called "Think It, Plan It, Do It Now," and the giveaway is in the title.
Bingo. And Keisha, what's the name of your book?
Soon come.
Okay. And KEIMA, your book?
Name.
They said there's a book in everybody. There's a book in every single person.
Hey, listen, Keisha and KEIMA, what you need to do is think it, plan it, and do it now.
Okay. On that note, we'll wrap up and then we'll pop over to Instagram to join with Dr. Burton. Dr. Burton, Anthony sort of breaks down a bit because he's in the whole field on the front line there. He's an ophthalmologist, Mr. Burton. I think he's been at an event. So we're going to go on to there. But remember, tomorrow night we have Nicole Leon on. We have Youth Connections because each week I try to have a young person to come on and to really share their thoughts and just talk about what they do. Anthony's got a daughter also. She is into spoken word. Trying to get her on, but she's so busy, isn't it? Well, we're gonna get her on at some point, you know. So Anthony, listen, thank you so much for joining us at such short notice.
Thank you.
And I'm looking for you. Anthony just lived 5 minutes away from me. Yo, Anthony, yeah. you can hear me. And Keisha and KEIMA, thank you so much for coming on. And guys,
see you next week.
See you next week. And
bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, Team KEISHA, Team KEIMA, you decide which is one. And one day, the plan is to get them to dress the same. And I will remove the name and you'll see if you can actually work out who it is. I want to thank you guys for coming on. James, thank you so much. James, you're going to join me on Instagram, if anything. And Deanne and everybody else. And Shelly and Myri as well. Shelly Ann is my wife, but there's another Shelly Ann here as well.
I was like, that's not that Shelly Ann.
All right, but so thank you very much, Anthony. All the best, yeah. Okay, good
Bye-bye.
stuff. Okay,
Yeah,
bye-bye.
bye now.
Bye. Thanks. And I just want to show this for tomorrow night. There it is. Nicole Leon, founder of Iron Sharpens Iron, on the late one. She's gonna come on tomorrow night, and make sure you tune in at 8 p.m. Very interesting person, very dynamic, and look forward to that. I'm sorry, 1 second there. Yeah. So that's Natalie, which will be coming on tomorrow. Nicole Leon will be coming on tomorrow night. And ladies and gentlemen, let me just do this. Let me just do this properly. Deanne, thank you so much. James Singular, you messed me up with the names. James, Deanne says, KEIMA, love your top. Keisha, beautiful smile. Hopefully you're back, Anthony, you're requested to come back. James, party session, whatever. Employees, tell my employees that, please. Okay. All right. Well, I want to wish you a good night. Have a wonderful night. And tomorrow night, remember you come on. And also on Saturday night, across the Atlantic, I'm going to have Beanie Man. I'm just kidding. I'm going to have Itana. I don't know. I think I want to go to Jamaica this time. I've been going to the States a lot. Get somebody from somewhere, anywhere, across the Atlantic, So tune in. Anything will happen. Have a good night. Remember to like and subscribe. We've got a YouTube channel as well. Like and subscribe to the Instagram and make sure you do that. If not, you'll be square. Have a good night. Thank you. Bye-bye.